Fi'i wa'anaksan kiddos. I discovered this fascinating tale while I was going through my story repertoire, and considering our last tale, I would be remiss not to tell this one because it fits so well. So, let's get started.
Boqorkii, Lahaa, Dhagaha, Dameerka.
Don't worry, I'll translate later. A long time ago, there was a king who had floppy ears shaped just like the ears of a donkey. The king was very embarrassed by his ears and always covered them up when he was in public so that the people of the village would never be allowed to discover his secret. The only person that ever saw the king's ears was his hairdresser. The king often warned the hairdresser, "You must promise never to tell anyone that our hair is shaped like a donkey, or I will send my guards to your house and will take you away to my prison where you shall remain for the rest of your life." The hairdresser found it very hard to keep this secret because he wanted to tell all the villagers about the king's ears, but he always remembered the king's warning and so kept the secret to himself for many years. But one morning, the hairdresser woke up and knew that he could keep the secret to himself no longer. He got dressed and left his house and walked out of the village into the countryside where he was sure that he was all alone. Then he found a patch of flat grass and began to dig with his hands. Eventually, the hairdresser made a very deep hole. And when he was satisfied with his work, he leaned over into the hole and shouted at the top of his voice,
"The king has ears shaped like a donkey! The king has ears shaped like a donkey!"
Once he had shouted out the king's secret, the hairdresser felt much better. Then he covered over the hole with earth and grass and returned to his home, reassuring himself that he had not really betrayed the king's trust. Many years later, there was a school built next to the hole and a playground built around the hole where the children would play when they were not in class. One day, when all the children were playing in the playground, a young boy discovered a hole hidden beneath the grass and earth. The boy quickly cleared the earth away, and all of a sudden a loud voice escaped from the hole up into the air for all the children to hear.
"The king has ears shaped like a donkey! The king has ears shaped like a donkey!"
The children were very surprised to hear the hairdresser's voice fill the air, and they giggled and laughed about the secret of the king's ears. When they got home that day, the children told the secret to their parents. Then, the parents told the secret to the rest of their family. Then, each family told the secret to all their friends. "The king has ears shaped like a donkey! The 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 king has ears shaped like a donkey!" They laughed to one another. Very soon, the whole village knew about the king's ears, and they all giggled and laughed because they now know why the king always covered his head whenever he was out in public. Well, it did not take very long at all before the king realized that everybody knew his secret, and he was very embarrassed and very angry. The king remembered that only one man knew about his donkey-shaped ears, and so he sent his guards to the hairdresser's house. The guards took a hold of the hairdresser and dragged him back to the palace and threw the man into the prison where he was told he would spend the rest of his life. The hairdresser pleaded with the king to let him go, but the king said to the hairdresser, "You promised me that you would not share my secret, but you could not keep it to yourself. I trusted you and you betrayed me. Very well. For this, you will spend the rest of your life in prison, and you will learn that it is always important to keep your promises to others and not to share secrets." And so, the hairdresser remained in prison for the rest of his life, and always felt sorry for sharing the king's secret when he had promised not to do so.
Boqorkii, Lahaa, Dhagaha, Dameerka.
The king with donkey ears. As you may just figured out, or already had a version of this story told to you even before my anthology, there's more than one version of the myth of poor King Midas and his ears. From Ireland to Somalia to Kyrgyzstan, there are many versions of the same myth with the same structure. The monarch has a deformity with his ears, a person confides to the nature about said deformity, and then nature wreaks havoc by announcing said deformity to the world. The most interesting version is the creation myth of Lake Issyk-Kul. The king would routinely kill his barbers after they discovered the dreadful secret, but one survived. Fearing for his life, but with the burden of the king's secret weighing heavily upon him, he decided to confide to a well. But the forgetful barber neglected to put the lid back on the well. Unable to keep the enormity of this secret, the water overflowed and flooded the barber, the king, and his kingdom, where the ruins of which remain at the bottom to this day. Most fascinating of all is the fact that all these stories have been based on a simple misunderstanding. long before the ancient Greeks in the region that would become Phrygia was the mighty Hittite Empire, who venerated the humble ass and used the animal in their legends, rituals, and symbols. Phrygia inherited this veneration, the Greeks misunderstood some things, and the rest is ancient mythology. From a simple Greek tale based on mistake, the story spread to all corners of the earth. Each stop it makes, the tale Midas became adapted to the culture, history, and notable personages of the area. Midas became the villainous Mark of Cornwall in the Legends of King Arthur. And in Ireland, instead of a hole in the ground, the barber instead used a willow tree, which was later made into a harp by the king's musician. Very similarly to the original tale, even including excessive punishment, the Somali version serves to teach a moral to young Somali kiddos about the importance of keeping secrets. Although it is quite harsh for the barber to suffer a life sentence for a little act of nature outside his control, no? So, as it is with many other stories, what started in one region of the world spread far and wide to instill the same universal morals that serve to make better people the world over, while pick up its own local color to make the original story even more unique and entertaining. And for our next story is another tale retold over and over across the world. But to find out which, well, you have to tune in next time. Happy Eva Anatsen, and God bless.